So, this is a really tough topic that we got coming up. It's been really in our nation. It's been the topic of pretty much like every conversation. So, we got to keep it a little light, man. We got to keep it just a little light. That was a little intro. This is something that we're planning on doing multiple different topics. We want to hear what you want to talk about. We want to hear what you want to hear us talk about. We're going to try to learn something new each and every day. Each time we do this, we're trying to do a new topic. We're trying to bring on different guests, hear different perspectives. And we have a call-in feature, so you can be a part as well. If you saw on Instagram, Snapchat, all that, it was saying, hey, join the conversation. Not just come hear us talk y'all ear off. No one's trying to do that. But just hit ! Call in, ! Discord. You will find out how to do it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. And also, we'll be watching the chat. So if there's anything that you have to say from what you hear, then let it fly. Just be respectful. Be respectful of everyone's opinion. Be respectful of what people are saying. We're not trying to have any keyboard warriors, any hate speech, none of that. That's not what we're about over here. We're about just getting down to it, sharing perspectives, and then just seeing, hey, how can we grow to be better? How can we grow to be better human beings each and every day and support one another? I said it the other day, Blackout Tuesdays, a couple weeks ago now, but united we stand, divided we fall. That's the name of the game. So let's see. We're going to hear some interesting perspectives from these boys and yours truly. So let's just get into it, man. Perfect with the song. Perfect.
Quite an intro. Look at this man right here.
Oh my
intro,
goodness.
The blouse is
Suit and
classic,
tie, baby.
bro.
Suit and tie blouses is different, bro.
I mean,
That's what I like to see, bro.
we got some serious
What are we
topics.
talking about today, Blast? What do we got?
All right, so I mean, I figure why not just kind of get into it, man? Like, we know what's been going on. We know what's afoot. I mean, there's different ways to categorize it. There's different ways to go about addressing the issue. But I mean, how would you guys say you're feeling at this point in time? I mean, it's definitely, in my opinion, a very tumultuous time in the nation, in the world. But I mean, whoever wants to go off with the first point, have at it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think one thing we could all agree on, if we have disagreements here and there, is that 2020 has been one hell of a year, like with the pandemic and, everything happening with police brutality, the looting that literally happened right outside my apartment. It's just been an insanely crazy year, to say the least. I feel like so many people have been impacted by a lot of things, So I think this is definitely the right time to have this conversation. It should have been had a long time ago, because this isn't something that's new. This is something that's been relevant, especially in our country for the last God knows how many years. Um, but one thing I will say though, even though there's a lot of, negativity in terms of the things that are going on, like videos that you see on social media and whatnot, I feel like in this day and age, I've never seen so much unison before in terms of like different communities and different people just, getting together and fighting for rights of the people that are oppressed, I don't know about you guys, but in my whole 25 years living, I've never seen this much support from so many different people. I mean, I log onto Instagram for 5 minutes and you see 20 million people posting stories about, information, resources that you can use to educate yourself. Obviously, we've all seen the videos of people protesting. Um, so although it's been, unfortunate, a lot of the things I've seen and a lot of the things that are happening in our country, at the very least, there's a lot of unison, I feel like, right now. So at the very least, it's something to, be positive about.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. It's been a tough year, 2020, honestly. I mean, starting with the whole COVID-19 issues, and obviously the Kobe death, and you know, back to back,
Hmm.
deaths from interactions with the police. I will say probably the brightest thing to come out of this year is just all the support. A lot of people are supporting this cause. This movement to fix things in the country, to fix things that have been lingering on for a long time. Um, and I mean, personally, for me, it's a great feeling, to see people that maybe I didn't believe or necessarily think were interested in issues like this, issues concerning people in specific neighborhoods and people of color and stuff like that. I think the support has been tremendous. And hopefully it continues, and we see some type of change. you know uh, it might take a while, but at least seeing that people are concerned, people are making decisions and doing things that make it as if they care, and that they're concerned about what's going on and the lives of people that they might necessarily uh, you know they might necessarily see, or they might necessarily interact with. It's a good vibe. It's a good feeling. And I just hope it continues.
Big facts, bro.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say much better than my colleagues have. Um, but you know, like Jose said, it's pretty cool seeing a time that's so filled with unison from a vast majority of people around the country. I feel it's something that since 2012, 2016, we've it's really been a very divided country, and probably before that.
Mm.
I'm sure the older people around there listening in can point out that this isn't something that's new. But maybe what is new is seeing a really vast array of people linked together. And I was talking about this the other day, saying really it comes down to love, man. You just gotta love love each other, love your neighbor, and I feel like that's where the movements of the actions come from. That yeah. Um, in terms of action, obviously, like it's been really cool. A lot of people doing great things right now. A lot of donations going into NAACP, into ACLU, in support of Black people across the country. And the one thing that I really like pointing out is that like this can't stop. This is a movement that we can't let it die down in June and July, August. This is something that has to continue through November, to say the least. Big voting season, and it's the way that you can really voice your opinion for local elections and stuff. Um, and just look at the individual response, look at what you personally can do, um, and yeah, just good energy.
Yep.
Always, brother.
100%. That's what we try to preach over here in this community. I mean, I would honestly like to echo what all of you guys said. I think the fact that everything has we've really been united, I would say, as a front, like especially on say the peaceful protest idea, and really trying to look at some of the core structural issues that we have as a nation. Because I mean, we can get complacent, we can say, hey, we're the leaders of the free world, however you want to take that or whatever, but that doesn't mean that there aren't problems day in and day out that people are facing. Like everyone has their own internal struggle, but I know that people may have way different internal struggles. For example, we see the issues that fellow Black people have to go through each and every day that no one else can really understand. It's very hard to really understand. It's very hard to have that empathy. You may feel bad, but it's really just thinking of each other not by skin tone, in my opinion, but just thinking of each other as human beings. Like we are all human beings. I am better than no one. No one is better than me. If we are able to have that mentality, then I think we could really go a long way and really start pushing the envelope of having a much more united nation. But I would like to say the protests are giving me a lot of hope. It is a pleasure to see people on the front lines, especially amidst these tough times, as Neil was saying, with COVID and everything that's going on, all the fear mongering and whatnot. It's just insane. right now with all of that. But I think that makes me want to kind of transition into the foundation of the issue. We're calling this the start of the conversation. So we have to acknowledge what are the issues at hand? What is really plaguing us? Like, is it kind of just like an overt thing? Is it something that's a little bit kind of swept under the rug? Like, what are your thoughts on that to everyone?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, I feel like in order to understand the extent of the issue, like in order to understand where we kind of went the wrong way, you have to have an understanding of our history, right? Um, I think it's important, obviously, to note that for 300 years, like black people have been oppressed, right? Like dating back from the um, Atlantic slave trade, where people were just freaking kidnapped from Africa and brought over to the States and were enslaved for what, like 200, 300 years, whatever the case may be. Um, and then even when that ceased to be a thing, right? Even when slavery, quote unquote, was abolished, um, there were still very subtle examples of oppression in the structure of our system, and even in some people's hearts, because it's not very when something has been ingrained in you for such a long period of time, it's very difficult to just completely renounce it. Not just the case with that, but in
That's
terms of
facts.
anything, like
Hmm.
if it's something that's been ingrained in you for a long period of time, especially something like racism, which has been a thing in this country for hundreds and hundreds of years, it's something that's very difficult to just um completely change. So obviously the glimpses of racism today are a lot more subtle than they were like hundreds of years ago. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously now you don't see like actual slaves or examples as drastic as you did back then, but still today you see like microaggressions, you see like severe racial inequalities that are inexplicable. You see like huge gaps in wealth, you see huge gaps in resources, um, just everything in terms of opportunity is there's just such a wide gap between white and black people. um, and I feel like you have to look no further than our history. It's something that will take a very long time to overcome because this country was grounded on racism. Like everything about this country was grounded on racism. So for someone to just um for that to just be dismissed, and renounced among the people of power is something that's extremely difficult. So I think a lot of the microaggressions and subtle forms of racism you see today are kind of in large part because of our historical come up. So um like you guys said, it is very nice to see that people are becoming more aware of the problem, and um people are putting out resources that people can use to educate themselves, which is all like very good. But this is a very deep problem that has been ingrained in our country for so many years, and it will take something like this, something like mass numbers of people protesting to actually change it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in my opinion, that's the problem. A lot of people still don't really um know what the issue is, because a lot of people don't necessarily know the historical implications. And in large part, that's due to the way history is taught to us, right? Like, you know
Amen to that,
h-
dude.
Hmm.
yeah, history is taught to us from the white man's perspective. So it's very difficult to grasp things like this when the information that we're getting when we're kids is inaccurate, or incomplete, I should say more accurately. So um yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
feel like
on
that's the
that
issue. Go
topic.
ahead, or whoever was saying.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Fik.
Hmm.
On that topic, today a news article came up, and it was about the tearing down of statues, and in particular Junipero Serra, a missionary, a Catholic missionary and I believe in the west coast of America. And so obviously, the Catholic Church has done some things in its history. We could say that.
Done
But
some things in its history.
yeah. Yeah, I'm a Catholic myself, but yeah, you have to be able to look back at the history and see it in its own historical context, as
Right.
well as looking at it from our own context.
Mm.
Um, and it was almost weird to me to see that statue of all the choices being torn down, because this is someone that you see, had profound impacts on bringing civility to native populations, is a lot of how it's phrased in textbooks. Um, and and then you have to look at it from the other perspective. LA Times put out a perspective from the native people's perspective, and obviously there was a lot of death and things like that associated with his coming around. So, you have to take a step back from what you learn originally and be able to be open to learning it from a different perspective. Um, that's something that I feel like I've been trying to ingrain that in myself, is, being open to looking at things first from like an open perspective, and then basing that in the history that I'm used to reading.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what Jose was talking about earlier about just the traces of you know racism and the treatment of people of color. You could just look at the criminalization of a lot of habits, a lot of actions in urban communities. People are arrested for being homeless. People are arrested for sex working and small things, maybe like petty crimes, and that increases the interaction of the police with these people in these communities, in these spaces, in these areas. And a lot of times these people end up getting thrown into jail. They end up being incarcerated, spending time in the legal system. And the system isn't set up the best way to help those people that get out.
Definitely
Those
not.
people that get out aren't necessarily allowed the benefits of trust. It's hard to secure jobs, it's hard to vote, it's hard to do a lot of things in the country after incarceration. And I feel like you know um, obviously we don't have the answers, right? But it's tough. It's tough, and we have to figure out a way, to even the playing field out for all of us, because you know it's um it's set up in a way that some people just can't come back from, honestly. And yeah, it's a sad, it's sad, dude.
Yeah.
It's sad.
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I think just the remnants of systemic racism. Like, I know you may say that the civil rights era really championed what the nation has become, but is it even really fair to say that? I mean, I know there are even people that are in the younger generation. For example, I was in a class and someone said something along the lines of, oh, if we went back to how things were in the 60s, I know contextually that sounds like, oh, like what did that mean or anything like that. But me as a black male, I was kind of taken aback by that. I was saying, like, do you understand what the 60s were? Do you understand, like, how that could be somewhat insensitive? I mean, there's already so much that we have to put up with as a group of people, and the system really is not set up for us. The system is really set up for us to ultimately fail, in my opinion. There's, for example, you may have guys like Pusha T. You have him in lyrics all the time. He said CNN said I'd be dead by 21. I mean, there really are a lot of disadvantages for black folk, African American folk, and I mean, I think it's something that we have our voice. This is our time. We're all 24, 25, but I mean, hey, we're not kids anymore. We're adults. We have the power to have at least some sort of impact on this. We have the ability to go out and vote. We have the ability to kind of push for reform, push for not just reform, not just band-aid reform where you say, oh, I'm gonna do this for police reform. I'm gonna repeal this and that. I mean, those things are great. Those are baby steps. But once again, like I said, they're baby steps. This will not go away in a month, a couple years, when coronavirus is over, after George Floyd is forgotten, anything like that. This takes decades, maybe even centuries. So I think that's transitioning. I saw a good question in the chat basically saying like, what is the end game? What is the most important legislation or identifiable change that we want to see? Does anyone have anything they want to share on that?
Yeah, I could say something on that.
Mm-hmm.
So two that come to mind. One is something mentioned in the chat by S Fishy. Nationwide ban the box legislation. So that, like, what is that? So generally, a lot of job applications have tiny little box that you can check off. Are you or have you ever been convicted of a felony?
Yep.
And not only is that from a little reading on that, I've read a lot of things that say not only is that a detriment to the individual and his or her ability to get a job, but because of the large number of Black people in the country who are incarcerated, the fact that interviewers tend to see a higher percentage of Blacks checking that box, it puts a stigma on the rest of the Black community as well. And it leads to a lot of interviewers having stigma about Black people and the likelihood that this random person that they'll be interviewing before they even meet them will, have some ties to incarceration, issues with being arrested and stuff like that. The second one that comes to mind is Cory Booker, pretty recently, I think last year, was a pretty big proponent of this Reverse Mass Incarceration Act. And the intention is essentially incentivizing the individual states for reducing capacities in prisons across their state. Whereas right now the system is set up so that they're incentivized to raise the number of prisoners. And that really comes about because prisoners are counted as population within the state. So you have more representation, even though they don't actually do the voting. So the people within that state will have a higher percentage effect on voting across the country. So those are two acts that come to mind. They're things that you can look for people that you want to elect that will support it. And yeah, that's my take on those.
Yeah. And Jared, I see you also asked about the whole like defunding the police
Oh yeah, I did
movement.
that.
For me, I also think I don't have necessarily the specific answers, but there's definitely a huge gap in terms of wealth distribution. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the money is going to, big businesses and, things that are controlled by people that are in power, right? So education, for instance, would be, I think, a very helpful way to help the cause. But the amount of money given to, local public school teachers and people of that nature is very little compared to, let's say, the amount of money that is given to the police force, I feel like what we do, and Feek, I think you took an Eggmeyer class, so you probably, and you too, Owen, I
It's
think,
a goat,
right?
goat right
Maybe.
there, bro. Great teacher.
He always talks about like neoliberalism and neoconservatism, right? Like how we spend so much money on the military and so much money in order to give everyone the image that we're the most powerful nation in the world. That in itself creates just such a huge gap in the wealth distribution, So obviously you're gonna see a lot of black people in jail or black people not going to school because the amount of wealth that you're distributing to those populations is minimal compared to what you're doing to the military, or what you're doing to, the economy, or whatever, whatever it may be. So I feel like defunding the police would be, even, let's just say, the police officers aren't walking around oppressing black people, right? Let's just say they're not. Even if they're not, they still are given like way too much money for what they do. So you
For
just
sure.
add in the fact that they're running around doing buffoonery all across the country. That's even more of an incentive to do that. But at the end of the day, I think this country in general has a huge problem, um, with wealth distribution. I think it causes a lot of the stigmas that you were talking about, Feek. Like, obviously, as you're born with a disadvantage. You're already born with less resources. You're already born into most likely a neighborhood that doesn't allow you to succeed as easily as someone who is white living in a wealthy neighborhood would allow you to.
Mhm.
So I think that would be a good place to start. Maybe um, look at how we're managing the wealth in this country and see how we can redistribute it in a way that um, can kind of bridge the gap a little bit.
And
So,
to go even further for defunding the police, there actually a student that went to my high school a couple years before me. His name is Philip McHarris. He's a Yale student, grad student. He
government
was
name,
actually,
bro?
he said what?
A government name, bro?
I
Who?
mean,
This guy.
well, I mean, because there's an article out, you can read it,
Oh,
and
okay, okay.
yeah,
Go
like he
ahead.
talks about
We got the governments
and he
now.
spends a lot of
Whoo,
time
sheesh.
he spends a lot of time talking about this stuff. And I listened to his article, and he had an interview with CNN and with PBS, and he was letting us know that funding for police in 1960 was $2 billion, right? In 2018, it was 137 billion
My
dollars,
That's
goodness.
crazy.
right?
That's
And
insane.
insane, right? And to go with that, he talked about how what makes the communities that are the safest safe, right? Usually, it's not an abundance of police officers roaming the streets. What it is an
Education.
abundance of resources, exactly.
Exactly.
Education,
Yeah.
adequate housing, you know,
Exactly.
things going to the community, to the neighborhoods, to build up the neighborhood, build up where these people live, build up their standard of living. It'll. I feel like, and I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't have stats to back this up, but contribution to the community and to the places where these people live will do a better job than people coming in to these communities, foreign people that don't spend time with these people, arresting them, judging them, detaining them for little and small reasons, right? He talked about creating emergency response systems,
Mm.
to foster public safety, hiring people from these communities, people of color, people of diverse backgrounds that know how to deal with the people that are in these communities and in these neighborhoods. And he even brought up like Minneapolis and how Minneapolis is pushing towards defunding their police system, the entire the police system over there. And at first I remember talking to Blastus about this a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I don't know. I mean, that means like, people will be just doing whatever they want. But, if we allocate the right funding and the right
Mm.
amount of services into those that we can trust, those that we know can deal with these people and not cause these incidents where people are losing their lives, where people are being shot, where people are dying, you know,
Mm.
then,
Right.
Right.
I think it'll contribute to a more cohesive, what you look for in a neighborhood, what you look for in a place where you want to raise your kids, where you want your kids to go to school, things like that. Yeah, and I mean that even goes back to what I was saying about decriminalization in general, and how the police come into these neighborhoods, and they're looking for people, homeless people, people that the victims of criminalization of petty crimes and small crimes are homeless, people struggling with mental health, people struggling with drugs, you know, impoverished people, and it's easy for those people to get picked up by the police. It's easy for
Of course.
someone to just see someone outside and be like, oh, that guy, he might be struggling with maybe a drug addiction or, maybe some mental health issue, or he might not have a home and he's wandering the streets. Someone calls the cops, hey, this guy's walking around, he might be trying to steal. And then, that just leads and builds upon other issues, and this guy ends up being in the legal system, and his life is perpetually doomed. Um, I think defunding the police, the more and more I research and look at these articles and the insights these people possess, I think maybe it'll work. We've tried the body cam stuff, we've tried diversity classes and things like that. Those things, I mean, maybe we have to wait a little bit longer, but how much longer can we wait for some type of change, some type of progress? You know what I'm saying? Like how
Yeah,
much longer can we wait for this stuff? The
Mm-hmm.
body cams don't seem to be working enough. I don't think every city in the country mandates body cams on their police officers.
yeah,
So maybe the defunding of the police. Maybe we need to wait and see what happens in Minneapolis, see how
mm,
the communities are responding to it,
results.
and
Yeah,
see the results, and then maybe
mm,
that's something that we can use, to you know maybe end this violence, end these murders, because it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate.
100%.
People shouldn't be losing their lives, for all this stuff. They shouldn't
yeah,
be losing their lives because they don't have anyone to help them. They don't have an avenue
yes,
to
sir.
get the help they need. It just doesn't make sense.
Sure.
The police should be coming out and trying to get these people where they need to get to. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And it's unfortunate that a lot of people lose their lives. A lot of people end up in jail. It's unfortunate.
You're right. I
Yeah,
mean,
I sorry, go ahead,
no,
Moses.
there you go.
I was gonna say that's a great point that you make. Even simple things like education, for instance, right? Um, People think that the gap in, let's say, SAT scores, right, between black and white people, are an indicator of like how smart they are, right? But a lot of statistics have been shown to prove that the SAT isn't an indicator of how smart or not smart you are. It's an
Hmm.
indicator of the resources that you have available to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously, if you grew up under great circumstances and had a tutor growing up, and went to the best private school in, I don't know, Lower Manhattan, chances are you're gonna get a higher score given the resources you had compared to someone who grew up in the Bronx and went to a public school where it was not very organized, et cetera, didn't have the money to pay for a tutor. um, for me, it's all about resources, like the resources um, that that are given to minority people are just it's almost laughable, so. And I think, kind of along with what you said, a lot of people are misled, to think that these are caused by other things, like criminals think they think that people that commit crimes, it's because they're criminals, or people that don't do well in SAT testing, they're just dumb. It's not that. It's just they don't have the resources that kind of would allow them to succeed. So yeah, I do think there's a big problem with that, and it obviously, just going back to what Fiki said, it allows for people to just create this stigma, right? To categorize certain people as this or that without understanding the deeper implications, So it's just, yeah,
Amen.
facts, bro.
Yeah,
That's what you did just now.
I honestly, I want to go back to the whole thing with the defunding of police and everything like that. And as Neo stated, we had discussed that prior, and it I really didn't fully understand the concept. I think I may not have educated myself to the extent that I had to, but just looking through different articles, looking at just how much money is pulled into the police, whereas our schools are being defunded, public schools are being defunded. So kids aren't getting the fair shake that they deserve. They're not getting the education that they need that may not
Mandatory.
exactly that may not make them resort to doing certain things. They may know a little bit better, or they may just not try to not find themselves in certain situations. A lot of people really don't know any better, and then they're already kind of set up in a trap where the police are basically like, oh, like, you know what? Oh, yeah, let's get the numbers up. Let's get it going. Like, oh, this is such a safe place. We're doing this. We're making this many arrests. We're doing this with these people. And then they're not even equipped to do their job. The amount of time that they put in to train and be prepared for each and every situation is absolutely appalling. It's
Mhm.
insane how for a job in which you have to be able to balance so many different things. And don't get me wrong, there's emotion in there. Like you never know. Oh my goodness, I'm going up against what's perceived to be a bad guy. Like what do I do? I don't know what I would do in a situation like that. I'm not sure on what I would do if someone were to pretty much challenge my perceived power. So you need to have these people in simulations. You need to have them where they're really readily equipped to deal with the stressful situations that they find themselves in. I'm not saying that every cop is bad or anything
Oh no.
like that. Like that's the narrative that I'm not trying to push. I'm not trying to push, hey, let's not have the police whatsoever. I think if you have the police in a healthy way, as you said, like I'm I'm in Queens. If someone's from Long Island coming into Queens, they're not gonna know anything about me. They're not gonna know anything about the neighborhood, what we're all about. There's no connection. So of course, if they see something and they may not know, then the first thing is like, okay, shoot first, ask questions later. Like that's how it's
Yeah.
a very reactionary type of response. While instead of being proactive and saying like, hey, let's get out into the community, let's have a neighborhood watch, let's see how we can really embrace the people that are there and truthfully protect them. So I think
Yep.
that's something that we have to do. I'm seeing a lot of great stuff in the chat.
Yeah, the chat's crazy.
Yeah, the chat has really been blown up. Just
Hard to keep up.
yeah, just gotta say thank you to
Yeah.
everybody for coming
Shout out.
through. It is insane what we're
Big
seeing
shout
right
out.
now. We were really looking forward to bring this to you guys. We were really looking forward to just hear what you guys have to say because we know the people that we've met throughout the years, a lot of great people, a lot of great perspectives. And I mean, this is the platform. We need somewhere to say how we feel, question things. We should not just be seeing something happen and then just turn a blind eye like, oh, okay. Because ignorance is not an answer. It 100% is not an answer. We have to tackle these things as they come. So we have a couple call-ins. Um, if you want to call in later, exclamation point call in, exclamation point Discord in order to get those. So we'll feature a call in real quick. And also just word to the wise, we're trying to keep the call-ins a little bit brief because I know there's some people that definitely want to get in here, say their piece, have a comment, have a question, want to be able to discuss. And I think there's some things in the chat that some of the callers can also kind of weigh in on. I think I want this to be as interactive and as experience as possible. So first caller coming in right now. Hello?
Who we got? Who do we got?
The
Oh,
one
it's the
only
GO himself, bro. That's who we got.
Bro.
GO himself.
Jay Boone.
Might be muted though.
Jay Boone
Milwaukee
SBP.
Bucks fan right here, bro. Let's get it.
Oh man,
Boom.
where's he at?
All right. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Sir, we
boy.
can hear you, sir.
oh man,
All right. What's up, y'all?
what's
What's going
up,
on, bro? Missed you,
What's
bro.
up?
Haven't seen you in so long, man.
Doing
Man,
well.
it-
Doing well.
Jared? This takes me back. This take me back to the old days, bro. In 421.
It was
I
420.
know.
Bro, dude, yo, we can't talk too much, bro. I might start
Remember,
crying, bro.
I might start tuning up, bro.
Yo, too many memories, bro. Too many memories.
Oh man.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
Hey, shout out to Blouses for putting this together and for y'all to do this. That's real. That's real, Blouses.
Appreciate you, brother.
Salute.
Appreciate it, man.
I'm gonna drop some knowledge real quick.
Do your thing, bro.
I saw some comments in the chat, and I can talk about it from a history perspective. The someone mentioned how the Nordic states like Finland and Sweden do their policing, and there's very little, and especially in the Netherlands, and how there's very little violence with respect to police and their interactions with citizens. To put it plainly, the police in the Nordic states don't murder people because they think that they might be armed. But the reason why that might be in there might be this huge disparity in the United States is because our system, and Owen, Neil Conte, you mentioned this, our system is based off of criminality. So we have to first go back and consider, well, when was this notion of criminality established, and how was it implemented systematically? Black people, immigrants in general, have been demonized and marginalized and considered criminals since we've gotten here. It started with African Americans. Arguably, it started with Native Americans, actually. And then it transitioned to other racial groups like the Italians and the Polish and the Irish. You can go on down the list. But in America, our system, our justice system, and I say justice in quotes, our justice system is based off of race and class. When all five of
Straight
us
up.
and people in the chat who went to the same school of us as us, we saw people do drugs regularly.
Easy.
We saw people conduct themselves in a quote unquote sketchy manner.
In an illegal manner, right?
Yeah.
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 Jay,
Yeah,
Jay
we
trying to
see.
keep it PG.
I say sketchy on purpose because that was the code word for ghetto on our campus.
Oh,
Right.
for sure.
Yes, sir.
You know? And we saw people conduct themselves in ways that if we had done it at home, we would have gotten arrested and or killed. And some of our family members have been arrested for that behavior and are currently serving time for that behavior. So the question that we should consider in this conversation is what does it mean to be criminal, and how did it become that way? And when we examine history, not with a politically correct eye or a sensitive eye, but a factual eye, it is clear that immigrants and people of color were demonized and criminalized simply because of their race, sometimes because of their gender, and a lot of times because of their economic class, which was mentioned earlier before. So my roundabout way of talking about that point of can we implement a system of policing like they do in Finland, where only 2 people every 10 years are killed, is yes, we could, if you're optimistic and hopeful. But if we examine how our system of justice is established or was established and currently operates, it's based off of race. And I don't know if America can ever shake that that sin, the original sin. I don't know if they can ever shake that sin. So that's a good point. And then my last thing I'll say, and then I'll share the space with someone else, is that there are examples of communities out there who are doing great things with policing. Camden, New Jersey is one of them.
Amen.
Yep.
Definitely.
Down in South Jersey near Philly, they've done a really good job with community policing. Newark is doing better. And if we really want to get serious about changing this, it goes back to what Mr. Zoldyck said. You got to defund and reallocate funds and put them, like Blouse has said, in places like schools that support kids.
Yo, I'm real quick, man. Somebody needs to give this man Jay Boone his own TV show or his own podcast. This
Hey,
man
bro.
reaching, bro.
We call it. We
If we had a video right now, he'd have his hand on the Bible right now. Going crazy. This is what I need, man. I wish we had a fifth box, bro. I swear. I wish we had a fifth box. Really let us know, bro.
Professor
We
Boom,
appreciate
bro.
it. Hey, shout out to Jay Boone, because Jay Boone
Hey.
is teaching these young black men, he's
Yes,
teaching
sir.
these young people of color right now that are growing up to be better people, to be smart, to be aware of what's going on, because it's
Yes, sir.
important. We need to pay it back forward. That's the biggest thing we can do in our lives right now, is to pay it back forward to those after us, so that they are aware of what's going on in this world,
Yeah.
and they can be advocates and pillars of change, man. It's a beautiful thing. It's a
Hey,
beautiful-
man, it can't
Great
get
work,
more
Jared.
real. It can't get more real than doing it for a living, right?
easy,
work,
bro.
So I
Easy,
mean, that's
bro.
all. That's all that's got to be said.
And you know, they say you got to be the change. So
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
indeed.
Yes,
Be the
sir.
change you
Big
want to see.
sacrifice. It's a big sacrifice this man is making.
that's right.
Shout out to Jay Boone.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
Always.
brother.
Congrats on coming through, my brother.
Appreciate
Yes,
y'all.
sir. Thanks a lot, Jay.
No
Peace.
doubt, no doubt.
Sir,
All right. Jay
Oof, what a
Boone.
drop! What a drop of knowledge we just had, man.
My
I love
goodness.
that.
Yo,
Person.
whoever's next, y'all wish you luck.
Yeah.
Man, Facts, bro.
They
Oh
going
man,
crazy, man.
Ooh, he really
He say,
popped off
Yeah,
right there.
and for the
yeah,
people in
bro.
the chat, yo, we used to hear this
That was
all
our
the time. Your
roommate.
roommate used to
This
hear
is
this all the time.
Every
This
night.
is
this is an everyday thing for us back in the day. So
y'all might be like, yo, how like is this like something you guys are just doing for the pod? But nah, it's
nah,
we've talked like this probably the since the last
7 years long.
7 years.
Mm-hmm.
sure.
years long.
It's how we talk about what's going on. It's how we get we communicate with each other, how we get our thoughts off, what we're thinking about. It's important.
Yep, not for
And it's a
show.
good thing. It's a good thing. More people should do it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yep.
That's how we
Who we got
knew.
next?
As soon as we saw the J Boone in the chat, we knew
Oh,
it was
it was over.
fireworks.
Yes,
was
We
sir.
already knew.
It's over, bro.
Yes,
Appreciate
Who we
you,
sir.
got next,
Jay.
Klaus?
Shout out to my brother, man.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we got another caller. We have a lineup of 3 other callers right now. I think
Okay.
after that, we may be able to take 1 or 2 more. And I know we have a
Okay.
lot of questions in chat, so we definitely need to take a look at those. If we do not get to your question, we are planning on doing this. If not next week, then the week after. If you guys want to see it next week, then put it in the chat. Just say next week. If you want to see it 2 weeks from now, then just don't say anything. I guess
make
I
it
don't
happen.
know. Yeah, I mean, we gotta make it happen regardless. Yeah, I mean, we gotta bring it to you guys. We gotta have the space for everyone to say what they want to say.
Yo, J Boone said tomorrow, yo.
Oh, tomorrow. Oh my
Jay
goodness.
Boone's used to this everyday thing, bro. That's what it is, bro.
Yesterday. Oh my goodness. Vinny Vengeful.
Vinny,
Oh,
bro.
Vinny Vengeful. But we got another caller coming in. We got you actually heard his music in the
Oh, my.
beginning. So shout out to this talented man. He's coming in right now. Dragoman. Hello,
Oh,
hello.
Wait, nobody
Alright.
told me a king would be in here. Whoa.
Stallion,
Oh.
bro. It's a whole
I
No,
guess I can
no.
sit back for the rest of the hour.
No, soy
Yeah.
peasant.
I'm gonna go take a nap, bro.
I am
I'm
the
kind
peasant.
of nervous now.
It's a stallion in
the
the chat,
peasant.
bro. Hold up.
Welcome, D.
I'm the royal
Mare.
postman.
So, D, how you doing, bro?
Hey man, not as well as y'all kings. Just here
Good
sitting
guy,
in my
bro.
little domicile, watching y'all preach justice as I go ahead and shovel poop.
Ah.
What you got for us, brother?
Man, a lot of things. I'll be quick for y'all. Just try and drop some quick dimes of knowledge. So something I've
Sure.
I've
Your
noticed
thing, bro.
upon doing my my research here is that you try and look for a cure, right? What's the end game? What's this actually going to bring about? It
Mhm.
comes down to training in the short term. I talked to some of my more militant friends, right? And we can't exactly get away with public execution. So what is the answer? Training, man. It's so to become a cop, it takes 21 weeks in the United States, as opposed to in most of the European Union, where it's 1.5 to 2.5 years. So in terms of people we should be following lead wise in police force, I said in the other app, it was Finland and Iceland. So Iceland since 2002 has killed 2 citizens, and Finland has never killed anyone. How is that possible?
Crazy.
Right? That's crazy, right?
Right, it doesn't have to be like this, right?
No,
Straight up.
not in the slightest. If you give people that barely have their GED, could have a host of psychological issues, and put them in a 21-week course and then give them a gun, the fuck do you think they're going to do? Pardon my
Joke,
French.
bro. It's a joke. It's a fucking joke, bro.
It's
Mhm.
ridiculous, right? you don't need 2 squad cars to pull up when you have a roach and a cup holder. There's better ways to do this.
Ah.
But, so what do you do? All right, it's you have to effectively train. Damn, I'm hearing myself in like both halves. What's going
Yeah,
on?
Bro,
I'm-
mute,
I'm-
You have
mute
to
your,
stream. Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to stream up.
let me turn one of these joints off.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
There we
this man
go.
has some issues. It's all right.
There
Bro,
we go.
right.
Yeah,
Technical
you good,
issue.
bro.
Sorry, guys.
It's almost like I work in software. So what do? You have to devote more resources to training. You can't absolutely defund the police. You need policemen. I need policemen. I have met policemen that have been, a pleasure to work with. I was not speeding. They didn't give me a ticket, gave me a slap on the wrist. I'm like, okay, that's great. Right. And then you have, you know,
Right.
outright lynchers. You need people to know right from wrong, and you need some sort of legislation or, in some sense, actual punishment, because there's no fear that there'll be any serious repercussion if you gun down a man on the street if you're a police officer today, right?
Yep.
And there needs to be that sort of fear,
Right.
an effective deterrent to do so.
Facts.
So,
Accountability.
yes, accountability. Imagine, I'll just put it this way, and then let other people with more exciting things to say speak. If if an officer decides to err in their judgment and make a family reunion awkward next year, then it should go both ways.
Exactly.
So I'll go ahead and leave y'all with that.
Hey, we appreciate you,
quick.
bro.
Yeah.
We
No,
For
and
sure, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
yes, sir.
Appreciate
And
you, bro. Real quick.
Yep.
yeah, and kind
Thanks,
of just
bro.
responding quickly to what Dean said. Like I am also of that mindset. I don't like to make uh bizarre generalizations, and just accuse everyone of one group as being this or that. So I definitely, see what you're saying in terms of that. Reforming it, could be better than just completely abolishing it. For sure, especially considering the amount of training, like you said, that they have. It's you can do it in one, two, three, pretty much. So, and it shouldn't be that way. So, maybe that's a way to kind of go in the right direction. I guess we won't know until we actually put it into play and see what comes of it. But that's definitely something to keep in mind for sure.
I'm saying, yeah, like exactly like you say, where do you get the funds to train policemen more if people are worried
Yep.
about the funds? You can defund some of the police.
Yes, exactly.
Policemen don't
Yeah.
need AR-15s. And
Definitely
also,
not.
honestly, like policemen, they seize a lot of public assets.
Oh my
A
god.
lot of public assets. It doesn't cost that much overhead to run a police station. It is guns, ammunition, and paperwork, and uniforms that are recycled. It's not that hard, right?
Yeah.
There's no real tangible assets in a police station that are of much worth. So use those funds from defunding, super funded. For example, here's a better example. Last month was what, May? The LAPD just got Tesla cruisers. Do they need Tesla cruisers?
Hell
Probably.
no, bro.
Probably.
What? That's a thing? No way.
Yes, they just got them.
Wow. That's
What in the
astounding.
world?
Yeah, do you really need to be hawked down in a Tesla and a Model S? No. Don't get me wrong, shits are drippy, but the focus is wrong,
Right.
right? They, and especially famous police precincts like that, they already have the money. They already have the capital. It's not a matter of really, well, it is a matter of defunding in this case, considering that they are funded too
To,
highly.
to some
We can
extent.
get
Yeah.
into the
To some
unions.
extent. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because honestly, the UK has gotten away with not having, its policemen haven't had guns for over 20 years.
Yeah.
They have billy clubs, which are just nightsticks, which is British nightsticks, and it gets the point across, right? We get that the US is good at killing people, but how about training people? How about being better as people, right?
Yes.
It's places like that where you need to focus. And also teach this in school and teach it earlier than high school.
Oh
Because
yeah.
the parents,
100%.
Yeah.
parents can be raising these kids wrong the entire time, but if you teach it in grade school, right, with the purity of a child, they'll think, oh, they're not a different color, they're just my friend,
Right.
right? That's what you need to teach then before, somebody's Confederate fucking parents get to the better of them and, paint the wrong picture. You need to make these
Yeah.
determinations for yourself.
Yes. And
Wait.
I think
Go ahead, go ahead.
it's sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, I'll finish it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say painting the wrong picture has been something that we do very well,
Historically.
Yeah, historically speaking, just we have painted the wrong picture year in and year out. So I think a part of that also is you know, more distribution to educational systems, so that, and even implementing, um, black teachers in some of these public schools, and so on and so on, to kind of give a more accurate depiction of our history, so that things like that don't happen as often. Obviously, you're always going to have outliers, and it's never going to be perfect, but at least it's a step. A step is a step at the end of the day. So
It's a step.
Yep.
You can't effectively depend the public if the public isn't effectively represented. If you're in a
exactly,
school
yeah,
and there are no black teachers,
yeah, like
that's a problem. There's going to be a problem. There was the H&M scandal, right? Coolest monkey in the jungle 2 years ago.
Bullshit.
Oh yeah,
Bullshit.
Remember
dude.
that?
That
Yeah,
was some
yes,
bullshit.
sir.
yeah.
Maybe
That
if they had
was.
one black person on the marketing team, they could have avoided an over
Maybe
Wouldn't
that
have done
doesn't
that.
happen, right? Yeah,
$1 billion
maybe that doesn't
lawsuit.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right. Things like that. Things like knowing how the world came to be how it is. Oh, what is the hood? It's like, oh, they're just there because they want to do drugs and be poor. No, it's
No, it's
because
not.
they want to own a house like everyone else. But if they're a person of color, they're necessarily going to have a higher interest rate taking out a loan than somebody who's not of color. And so they
exactly.
all live in those areas. And those areas progressively get shittier because drugs are trafficked through those neighborhoods by the government
Yeah,
and
it's like a
covered up by
never-ending
police
circle.
enforcers.
And
Exactly. So people need to be aware of this.
Yes,
I was
sir.
gonna save this for the end, but just to piggyback off what you guys are talking about. It To me, it's never been a police issue. I'm sorry for any of the noises, but it's never been a police issue. I think it's more of a societal issue, right? Because these people, we don't just see them in the police, we see them in schools, we see them in other infrastructures, other businesses. It's You see them in college, you see them at the store. They'll look at you a different way. They'll watch you as you walk through the aisles.
Hmm.
It's more of a fundamental thing where we need to get the message across that you know we're all the same. We shouldn't be judged just because we have darker skin. We shouldn't be judged just because we live in neighborhoods that don't have the brightest grass, that don't have fenced yards, that don't have, you know, multiple floors, because we live in apartments. Like, we shouldn't be judged because of those things. It needs to be taught to all of us that everyone is should be treated right, everyone should be treated fairly, and we shouldn't carry these unfair criticisms, these unfair um, uh, biases. And I know it's hard, right? Because all of us, admittedly, all of us carry some type of bias, some form of bias.
Of
But
course.
like, that goes to a greater length, man. It prevents people from climbing up economic ladders. It prevents people
Hmm.
from
Yep.
establishing careers, from establishing livelihoods. Some people can't start families, bro, because someone saw them coming for an interview with dreadlocks. It's fucking insane, dude. It's insane. And I just hope that, I talk to Black sisters about this a lot. I don't know if we'll be alive when change is truly met, or when we see the great effects of change. But hopefully, down the road, years after years after years, it's ingrained into all of us that we shouldn't be just judging these people just because they're darker than the other, or because they come from a different place, or because we're from different backgrounds. It just doesn't make sense. There's no basis for it. There's no justification for it, and it's just not right. You know,
Yep.
so it's
100%.
Well
not a
said,
police
bro.
Right.
thing, man. Not a
Yeah.
police thing. It's a people thing. It's
Yes,
a
sir.
it's something that's taught and ingrained in us, because you can ask these people. I'm sorry for like going crazy, but you can
Do your
ask
thing.
these
Go
people,
off.
hey, like, why do you think this way? Why do you see people in this manner? And I can guarantee you, man, I can guarantee you, they're not going to give you an adequate enough response. They're
Nope.
not going to give you an adequate enough response. It's something that they've seen with their own eyes. They've seen maybe their parents or a relative do it. They've seen it on TV. They've been told this, and they just carry it along with them.
Because
And
hatred is predicated on nonsense.
absolute nonsense, bro. Part of I want to say another word, but I'm not going to say it. But it's it's sad, man. It's sad, and
Hmm.
it looks like I want to be optimistic. It looks like a lot of the people in our generation, at least, are in solidarity with us. a lot of
Right.
people that I didn't expect to see posts on social media from, or texts or messages, are reaching out and asking me if I'm okay, and posting links, even links that I didn't know about. Things that I could do better as a black man, to help this cause, help this reasoning, and that's amazing. I hope it continues. I hope more people see it, and those people need to touch and reach people that we can't reach in order for our message to get across to all of us. To get across to those that aren't paying attention, to those that aren't looking, those that aren't listening.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
yeah.
I don't mean to cut anybody off, but I got to split. I want to thank y'all for
Shout
having
out
me
to
on
Dean
the
Doe.
pod.
Shout out Dean Doe,
Always,
man.
bro. We appreciate you.
Hey,
Check out his track,
always,
though.
Appreciate y'all, man.
yo,
Appreciate
appreciate you
Sir.
for always coming through to these things, man. We could always rely on you to be there, so really
Hey.
appreciate it, dog.
Mm-hmm.
Call me, I'll be there.
Thank you,
You
sir.
already
Pull
know.
up.
Enough said, bro.
Yep, it was
Much love. I'll see y'all.
no
All right,
doubt.
Dean, take it easy, my guy.
It was a great perspective right there. I think that even addressed some concerns that we had in the chat, some questions about when is this going to change? When will we see change that we can really believe in and really start turn the corner and we're all equal? But we have our next caller coming in. TJ Gardner coming in right now. We're gonna
Welcome,
drag him in.
Timothy.
Is
Welcome,
this the
welcome.
real
Oh.
Timmy in here?
How's everybody doing?
Oh, man, I haven't heard.
Is mic actually
voice in-
on?
Yeah, you're good.
Yes, sir.
Nice and clear, bro.
I had like 2 mic troubles before, so I was like expecting it to drop out halfway through.
Third time's
Well, I had a
charm.
video trouble, so you're
Yeah,
all
this
wrong.
guy Feek was just throwing.
Damn, shit.
Third time's the charm.
What's up, Tim? How you doing, boss?
Good, I'm good. How y'all doing?
Hey, man, we're just here trying to spread some knowledge, trying to learn as well. All in unison.
Yeah, you got it, man. I got a lot I feel like I could talk about just based on the questions in the chat. People bringing up great stuff, like
Mhm.
awesome stuff from people before. There's so many things. Then I've been thinking about a lot in terms of like, where do we go from here?
Right.
Structurally with policing, but then also just like societally dealing with anti-blackness, dealing with racism in general. Kind of like, I think in terms of the structural problems, at least speaking from like well-intentioned white liberal Massachusetts, kind of like the environment that I'm used to the most, I think a lot of people get mixed up between a sense or lack of or perceived lack of prejudice and systemic stuff that just is bigger than how you view or see people. I've been talking to a bunch of people lately and sort of, even within my own family, like a lot of white people I know think that because they've stamped out their internal prejudices that they're good, or that if you can put up like a "love has no place here" sign like in the front yard, then they're good. And I think that that's like a good start and better than nothing. But talking about the history of this stuff, I mean, so many other people have spoken to this better than I can, but Massachusetts alone, redlining and all of these suburban towns that went with white flight in the middle of the 1900s. I drive through these towns all the time for work, and we'll have stuff about like no. Every time a new condo unit tries to go up, for example, there'll be an entire street full of like Black Lives Matter signs and has no home here signs, and also on the same properties, these say no to the condo unit going up, like preserve our neighborhood. And there's this disconnect between like, you can want to change things, but economic disparities are so ingrained that you have to be willing to change your surroundings and also change the structures. Like, affordable housing is a huge problem, and it affects people of color, but specifically Black people, way more than anybody else. And you can feel good in your white town about being on board personally. But if no affordable housing is getting built in any of your 6 leafy suburban towns, then that's still part of the problem. And I don't have like a great answer, But I think that something that's been, I don't know, like kind of contradictory, both heartening and also disturbing, is seeing how many non-black folks, how many white folks in particular, are kind of waking up to this idea that this is bigger than how I treat people on an interpersonal level.
Right.
And so that's been the structural thing that I've been seeing.
Yeah, and just to kind of go along with what you said, it's a lot more difficult to address an issue that at times can be so subtle as well, you know? Um,
Mhm.
like you said, it's obviously better than nothing for people to, be putting up signs and, doing this and that. Obviously, those things, even though they're not it, they do help to some extent, so we'd much rather have that than nothing. Um, but at the end of the day, like you kind of suggest, it is a much more subtle issue, a much more deeper issue. And I think addressing it at times is not as easy as some people think, it requires a lot of learning, both from a historical standpoint and a modern standpoint, and it requires a lot of action, I think that's the main thing, is going out and doing things that can benefit the cause, whether that be donating, whether that be, standing with certain people, protesting, voting is a huge one. I know Feek, the other day you mentioned it. That's our opportunity to voice what we have to voice, like once you vote, you're essentially to some extent voicing um, your concerns. So, utilizing that in a smart manner, like all those things at the end of the day are things we have to do to, actually make something happen. Because intent is always important. It's always something that you have to consider and look at when assessing any individual. But at the end of the day, intent means nothing if it's not followed by action.
Exactly. Amen to
So
that, man.
Yeah.
True
at the end
statement.
of the yeah, at the end of the day, we've got to just get up and do the things we need to do to make change. So yeah,
Yeah.
well said, Timmy.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Just to go off that, just to provide a little perspective. Tim, I appreciate you for the call. I appreciate you for the call in, for everything that you have done for me. I mean, when this went down about, I want to say 2.5, 3 weeks ago, Tim was one of the first people who reached out to me just to make sure that I was okay and that my family was okay. And I mean, you see on Twitter, Instagram, all over the place on social media, this thing about allyship fatigue and so on and so forth. And what you said about, oh, it's just on an interpersonal level. No, it's not just that. This is deeply rooted. There is no fatigue. There is no, oh, I mean, this has been going on for a couple weeks, man. Like, I don't know if I could do this anymore. Like, no, this is a character change. This is, we have to wake up and we have to
real.
be together and realize we are all equal. We're all on the same place. Like, we have to treat each other well. So I appreciate the perspective. And I mean, let's continue to champion on with perspectives like that. I mean, I don't see how we could lose. I really don't.
Ooh, ooh.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
man.
And just quick shout out also to, I know you guys have already said, but the people in chat, man, it's
Crazy,
crazy
sir.
the amount of support, the amount of engagement we've gotten. I see some OGs. I see some new people. Just thank you all so much, honestly, for being here, listening, sharing your knowledge as well, because obviously we all have a lot to learn. So just a quick shout out to you guys for
Yeah.
being here. Bestie, I see you too. Good looks.
Always.
Real quick. I just want to add that me being a black man, a young black man, it's not an easy conversation to have with your family, with your friends, these conversations. And I appreciate everyone in the chat. Like Soljic said, it's I didn't have I didn't have the greatest expectations in terms of how many people were going to come and listen to us talk about these issues. But it's been crazy, man. It's honestly been nuts. And thank you guys for coming out and giving us an hour and 18 minutes now, and just listening and providing your questions and contributing to the dialogue. It's important and it's needed. It's really needed, and you know, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'll throw a quick outro in there. Obviously, like, this isn't the topic that affects me as much as it does the three people on the screen with me, right? That's pretty clear. But my call into that is asking everyone else who looks just like me, to be the people to start conversations about it, because you can't go through your life as a black person spending all your time talking about the difficulties associated with your blackness, or you won't be able to focus on your work, grinding through your game, whatever it is. um, Black scientists can't always be the people to be advocating for other black scientists. Other people have to do it for them, otherwise they won't be able to level up in their own respective fields. And there's a lot of people out there who aren't going to listen to the other three people on the screen with me. So, it's my place, and it's the place of all the other white guys, white girls out there listening, to take a stand for that.
Amen.
So,
Yes,
that's
sir.
something I can say. So, get at it.
Wise words
Well
right
said,
there.
bro.
Wise words
Well
right
said,
there.
bro. Vouch.
TJ Gardner, appreciate you for the insight and all that. We got two more callers.
Thank you.
Two more callers. We have roughly about another 10 minutes left. We don't want to, like we said, we don't want to talk your ears off. So next we got the young
got here?
Vinny Vengeful coming in to
Hey,
impart
there we go.
a little bit of a
God
perspective,
legend himself.
ask a couple of
Damn,
questions.
God himself.
Yo, Vinny, make sure you don't have. Where's Vinny at?
Yo,
what's
Vinny,
up,
I just want to
guys?
say, bro, it's not my fault.
Hey, you have
Wait.
valuable things next to you, right, Vinny?
Wait, it's not your. Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean? What's
Yo,
going on?
Vinny, you're the
We're
best,
trolling you,
bro.
bro. We're
Alright,
trolling
bro.
you, bro.
We're trolling.
We're trolling you,
Alright.
bro. What's up, Vinny?
What's up, guys?
How
up,
you
man?
doing, bro?
Good, man. How are you guys?
We're doing as
We're
best as
good,
we can,
man.
bro.
We're
I'm
having a
loving.
great time, man.
I'm loving the conversation, to be honest. So I just wanted to start off by saying I am white, and I had the privilege of growing up in Brooklyn, New York, for the first 18 years of my life, and I had to move to Florida because my dad retired, and I was kind of just forced to move. I didn't have money to stay there, otherwise I would have. And let me tell you, when I first moved here, it is absurd how different the lifestyle is and how different people are. Um, if I never moved out of New York to Florida, I would have never found out that that some people think the way they do, and it's actually kind of mind-boggling that people actually do think this way, and it has definitely opened up my mind for me being more rational. Um, and I mean, even with certain things like all the people down here, that are white and they have their own opinions, and like, let's just say all this is going on and somebody says all lives matter. Of course all lives matter. Anybody with a functioning brain can understand that all lives matter.
I hate when people
But,
say that, by
but
the way.
right now, the black community is hurting and they need help. So until Black Lives Matter, all lives do not matter. Your life does not matter right now over the prejudice of some, the black community, and it needs to be addressed. Otherwise, it'll never change. So,
Amen.
I mean, what I wanted to get through to this is that, like somebody like my dad, right? He's white. We grew up as a middle class. He worked his entire life. There's just certain things that he will not change his thinking about, which is really sad. But even something like there, with Bernie saying that he wanted to give everybody Medicare, right? And my dad's against it because he's been working his entire life to get Medicare. He's 65, and I understand where he's coming from and stuff like that, but it's bigger than him, and I don't think he'll ever see it that way. He'll just see it as him being selfish, and he worked his entire life to get it, and he's okay with how things are because it's not affecting him. And this is pretty much takes president over everybody and everything that everybody else thinks about. They're okay with where they are, doesn't affect them, and I don't think living here has given me like a different point of view on how people are here, and this might not be something that we see changed until our younger generation is old. Until people are out of office that shouldn't be there, until the younger generation takes over. It's sad to say. I hope it happens sooner. Don't get me wrong. And there are definitely things that we can do to make sure that it does happen sooner. But it just seems like the younger generation has a better grasp of rationality and being open-minded.
Mm-hmm.
Because just having a conversation with somebody who's older, they're just very closed-minded. They just don't have the education to understand specifically what is going on. And I'm not going to say I do, right? I'm definitely not the smartest person ever, but having an open mind is where you need to start. And if you don't have that, then there's not going to be any change whatsoever.
Yeah, get them snaps up.
And first of all, well said. Second of all, I absolutely hate it when people bring up, the all lives matter in response to, the movement. And I think someone in chat actually, I don't know who this is, and if I should know, I apologize. But you put in chat, people just try to use shit to disarm a conversation. White lives matter, MLK quotes. What about black on black violence? That's exactly what people do, right? It's like a defense mechanism to shift the conversation into something else, right? So like clearly all lives matter. Like you said, anyone with a brain understands that all lives matter. But the point of the Black Lives Matter movement is to pinpoint the group that's being oppressed, right? It's not to pinpoint the group that's in a position of power. It's to illustrate the group that's being oppressed at the current time. So it's not we say Black Lives Matter not to say that all lives don't matter, but instead to say, there are a certain group right now that's being oppressed, and those are the ones that need the help right now. It has nothing to do with, we don't think that that white people deserve this and that. It's all about what's happening right now, who's oppressed right now, what's the injustice right now, and we're trying to address that problem. So I don't like it when people deviate to other things and bring up, you know, just other aspects of things in order to shift the conversation. So it's just a pet peeve of mine when people bring that up.
Yep, I agree.
You were gonna say something? Oh,
Mhm.
I saw your hand
I
up.
was gonna say something, but I think our last caller is gonna speak about it, so I'll let him talk about it first, and then I'll
Okay.
I'll piggyback off.
You'll defer.
Give him
Okay,
some time, yeah, for sure.
I feel that. I just wanted to say a couple things about. I just want to say a couple things about what Vinny had said. That perspective that you just offered is just might be the crux of the issue that we have. I think I'm not sure if it's a changing of the guard type of thing or if that's what's necessary. Like I said, like we said before, we're unsure as to if that will really change everything, but that's very unfortunate that that is what the prevailing thought is, or one of the prevailing thoughts, not necessarily the main thought, but like it's kind of like, oh well, I just don't believe that, and that's it. Like, end of story. That's not how you grow as a human being. And no disrespect to anyone that thinks that way, but I think it's better for everyone if we, as you said, have an open mind, really think about, hey, you know what? Maybe this is just a little bit bigger than just me. Maybe it's the person like right down the street. Maybe it's somebody who I work with and I don't even know they're going through that struggle. You never know what people are going through at the end of the day. So I think, as you said, if we continue to have an open mind and continue to preach the knowledge and wisdom that we've been trying to put at the forefront, then hopefully, man, hopefully we'll see it, as you said, in decades or as soon as we assume the power.
Yeah, and
Well said.
Listen, you say no disrespect, but disrespect because
No, it is disrespect.
that
Yeah,
in that
it's
in
just being
itself,
lazy as a human to not have an
yeah,
open mind. Why would you not? Why would you take information in and not create your own opinion of it? I just don't.
yeah,
I don't understand.
that in itself is a lack of respect,
Yeah.
So definitely disrespect. Just
Yeah.
saying. But well said.
Yeah, you guys
And it
are
goes-
you guys are boiling me. I mean, y'all said it.
I mean,
I ain't
you,
disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing.
it's
So
time.
it goes to every facet of life, bro.
Yes,
You should always
sir.
have an open mind about every single thing you do. You'll never, you'll never, you'll never be a worse person if you do. You'll never
That's a
be.
fact.
It's just you'll always make yourself better. You'll always be more, you always have more education that way.
That's a fact.
Sir.
Well said.
All right, Vinny. Thank you
Vinny,
so
yeah,
much.
appreciate
Thank
that,
you so
man.
much
Yes,
for your
sir, man.
perspective.
Thanks for
Thank you
giving
for
us that different perspective too. That was
Yes.
Appreciate you, brother.
yes, sir. Thanks,
All
man.
right.
Appreciate it.
Take
No.
care, guys.
all right,
Yes,
sir.
You as well.
For sure, for sure.
And now we got the last caller. Last but not least, thank you once again, everyone who's still in here. It's insane. It's insane that you guys even came out in the first place. We just thought it'd just be kind of just a little like round table, like we just talking, throwing some points up there, really having a place to have our voices heard. But you guys turned into that and much more. The greatest struggle of the day of my life. But we have our last caller. He's ready. He's a real trailblazer. A real trailblazer.
I don't even know who it is, so.
Nah,
Monster,
this
bro.
guy.
Oh
Monster.
no.
This
I'm
guy.
ready.
If you've heard of RBM, you know this man.
Oh
The
boy.
young God himself.
Welcome.
I don't.
Oh,
There,
Oh.
yeah, you good. Good here.
Oh man, I didn't know.
That
Oh,
voice,
that
baby.
no, bro. My
That voice
bad, bro.
reminds
Hey,
me of
real-
broken ankles in the
quick.
field house.
real quick, I just want to say this real quick before we get to serious stuff. I'm undefeated against this man in 2K. I just want to put that out there.
Oh nah, man. You should not have, man.
Oh man.
Welcome.
All right, so
Good, man.
how much time we got to chop it up?
Welcome,
I
sir.
ain't hear it.
We have about another 5-10 minutes, I would say. Okay, we're gonna wrap also. So
Do your
go
thing,
go
bro.
off, go off,
Do what
King.
you gotta
You
do,
do
bro.
you.
Say no more. First off, I love the points that all of you were like touching upon when it came to this conversation. Like this has been like such a big thing for me. That's been really significant for me since I've been younger. You know what I mean? One of my good friends from middle school, we were in 6th grade. He lost his older brother to police brutality. So we were 12 years old, and this has been something that's like found its way to leak itself into my life. You know what I mean? And not really having a firm understanding of like what the nuances of it, but then as you get older, kind of seeing the reality of the situation. Being a 17-year-old in my backyard in Irvington, New Jersey, and getting a gun pulled on me by a state trooper, because they were looking for dudes, you know what I mean, that or a person that lived on our block, who was suspected of doing something illegal, just like these things, didn't really find its way into like my full picture until like later down the line, until like the national conversation started happening, until Mike Brown, until Freddie Gray, until all these different things. But in saying that, just to say that for a lot of people that are listening, who is dancing look like him, this isn't like a 1-year thing. You know what I mean? This is a thing that's been like really prevalent for our lives since we've been children, or for however many years. I think back 06, 06 to the Sean Bell case,
Oh man.
over years before that, I think as a kid, like even as a kid, like 8-9-year-old, you hear of the Rodney King riot,
Yeah.
that we've been hip to since we've been kids. So that's like a really big thing. It has played a role in our lives since we've been kids. And before, like, without that little personal anecdote, let me just jump right in. I think that with a lot of white people, I think there's like a lot of like historical consciousness that's lacked in terms of like, oh, we're not responsible for slavery, so we don't really have an obligation to really speak out about these things. My family's good. We didn't do X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
So
Right.
us having a conversation is not necessary. And lacking that historical consciousness and lacking that ability to really like step outside of yourself is such a big thing that like kind of hinders us when it comes to pressing forward in the movement. Saying like, oh, I'm good, but not worrying about your friend that's out here saying the N-word when he's rapping along to a song or whatever. And it's like you're taking out the personal aspect of it, but you still exist in a space in which these things persist. You still exist in a space where you have a family member or friend that's still doing the racist actions or the microaggressions or the other bullshits, that kind of like limits us. You know what I mean? So it's like, as Dan said, you do have an obligation to like be out there, speaking just into an unjust room, because I'm not going to be in every single space in which like racism is being like perpetuated. I'm not going to be in every single room, but if you can do that while a person of color or a black person, is not in those spaces, that goes such a long way. It really does have like an impact, And I think another thing too is that like a lot of things that we think are normal or that non-people of color think are normal is that some of the microaggressions or some of the just like some of the behaviors we think are like lighthearted. Again, they do add to like this perpetuation of like racial stereotypes that kind of lead to the dehumanization of black bodies. I still think back to like literally like my first day like orientation activity at our school, who was in the room with the MPE, and this white kid like he gave a handshake to the other white dude, and he came up to me and tried to dap me up, and like as soon as it came time to talk, I was like, yo, he did this, and like people were kind of looking at me like, oh, I'm wrong for calling him out and shit, and it's like, no, things like that literally do add to the issues that we face, treating me in like a certain type of way that like kind of like lessens like my respectability and all that shit, and it's like that shouldn't be taking place. No one's saying not to see color, but we're asking that you respect it, you treat it appropriately. Back to this like just back to the conversation like past race, just talking about police. I'm not necessarily, I don't know, I feel like I'm wary of reforms, you know what I mean, just because the idea of reforms have taken place before, reforms have been things that have like been enacted in like different police departments across the country. The same, so like how are we going to solve reforms or more reforms if they've shown that they don't have an ability to work, so it's like it's kind of like it's a scary line that like we're walking along, you know what I mean, and like I think the notion of like abolishing police, is definitely something that like is something that people should like look into when it comes to like fixing this problem, funding the police, taking away like militarized weapons and things like that, that they reach for in every like situation. I think back to freshman year again. I didn't even know like our school had like security guards or officers or whatever who were equipped with weapons. But like being with ET and playing hoops or whatever, and then him getting asked to leave the gym, and then taking too long to leave the gym, the front desk person calls the officers to the place, and it's like 8 of them come through, swarm him, and like, yo, we have to escort you out or whatever. And meanwhile, like they're all like very trigger happy, to say the least. They're all like kind of like gripping their waist for whatever like weapon they have on hand, and it's like shit like that is like that doesn't have its place in a school, in an educational institution. It shouldn't be there. And then, as I said in the chat, being double pistoled up to direct traffic and do like simple shit like that. We shouldn't be doing that. And the idea of police just for like every situation, you shouldn't have a police officer for a person call a police officer for a person that's having a manic episode, for a person that's like experiencing domestic violence case, for a person that's being robbed. One person for all 3 of those situations requires such, like such different skill sets, and 6 months or 21 weeks, however long, doesn't necessarily equip a person to deal with all of that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, the idea of like continuing with police the way as is, or like with like small reforms, doesn't really feel like that would be truly beneficial to us. So no, I'm for abolition. Oh, I got it.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, I honestly though, like I also struggle with in terms of policy making, right? In terms of the things that should be done um politically to make change, I oftentimes struggle to really come to terms with what I think would be the most beneficial, Um again, I guess it would be difficult for us to know until we, I guess, try it out and see what the consequences and results are, right? But I mean, you bring up a good point, and I appreciate you kind of with that anecdotal evidence. The Holy Cross experience for us, I know, um, was crazy, and I know Owen and Blouses, from the stories they've told me, have experienced similar things. Um, but it is good that you bring to light the kind of things that we should do for change, because honestly, you know, being honest, I sometimes struggle when it comes to, the rigorous policies that should be put in place. So I appreciate your input there.
Now for sure.
Yeah, and on defund the police, I think that this is an issue that I see as obviously one that needs to be changed, right? And I think that we've really learned in this country that change doesn't come about easily. Um, you know, Protests have been happening for decades, as you're all aware. Um, and it's really a call for radical changes that even get small incremental changes completed. So it's not just that we can say, okay, police should have body cameras, or police should be, police chiefs should be held accountable. No, like, you have to get to the point of defund the police if you want anything to happen. Is really a point that I've come to. Yeah, just thought I'd throw that in there.
Oh, I know you said we're saying
Sorry, go
something.
ahead.
Oh, I know you were saying hello?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, oh, I know you had said you were gonna defer. Was there anything additional that you wanted to add in light of the wonderful insight that we just received?
Nah, I think Dylan expressed any views or ideas I had pretty well. So, no, I don't have anything else to add.
Got you.
What's that?
Yep.
Who's the person that's in here, bro?
Yeah, I don't know what this guy's
I
doing.
didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to say anything. So
I
I'm
was
just
gonna say,
quiet.
man, such
Be
a
quiet.
masterful
quiet.
presentation
I'm not saying
has
get the
been
split
kind
D
of.
in the chat though, bro. It's not a difference.
What? I'm not sure what I'm not sure what he said. I know it was
We
probably
should
pretty
give
funny.
them more money. Yeah, I don't know about that one,
Oh.
Chief.
Yeah,
Big
Oh.
delete.
Um,
Well done.
Okay.
Oh,
he's out
yeah,
of here, bro.
Yeah, I
it's
didn't.
it's
Yeah,
not because
he was given a
you had
chance.
it's not because you had a different opinion. It's just the way you conveyed your opinion was just
I'll keep it, man.
not really respectful to the people in the chat. If
I
you
just
would have
keep it.
presented your point a little bit more respectfully, then maybe we don't do that. But yeah,
We'll
man,
keep it simple, bro. We keep it simple.
we
We'll keep
might
it simple.
yeah.
Look,
Go ahead.
the stuff that he's talking about, it's not relevant right now. As simple as that. You don't need to bring it up. We don't need to hear it. He understands what we're talking about because he's been here for like 20, 25 minutes. Obviously, he's got an agenda to push. So we don't need him in the chat right now. So you can
Sure.
Many
We're not talking about slavery in the Middle East right now.
Yeah, it's not
We gotta
permanent.
give them more money.
reindeer emote.
That's funny, man.
He can take his reindeer emote somewhere else.
Yeah, whose emo even is that, bro? What?
I know,
What is
bro.
that emo, bro?
He can hold that though. He can hold that.
Is you finished or is you done? Facts, bro. Like, come
Yeah,
on, man.
Oh my
Jeez,
goodness.
bro.
I was gonna be quiet, but Jay mentioned it, so I had to let him catch one them real quick.
Oh man. Okay.
I apologize, Dill. I
Good
apologize
looks
for
on
that,
come
bro.
through, Dell.
Yeah,
Yes, sir, bro.
Yes, sir.
we appreciate you. I mean, as we grow as a community and everything like that, as we grow in numbers and we have more viewership, we will see things like that. Hopefully, if there is a point that is counter to what is being offered, it is offered in a very respectful manner. I think that was made quite clear in the rules. But I mean, it's the
Yes,
internet.
sir.
What are you gonna do? But I think we've had a very fruitful start to the conversation. I mean, what do you guys think?
Preach.
Yes,
I love it.
I do.
Yeah.
It's a great step. It's a great step.
Yes, sir. Oh, wow. I mean, the chat, thank you so much to everybody who came through. Thank you to our callers. Thank you to the people in the chat. Thank you to everyone who just made this what it was. This was a beautiful thing. I mean, people are saying,
Posing for a
people are,
picture.
wait, who, me?
Nah, this comes
Talking
up, bro.
to me? Yeah, this guy.
Right here, bro.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy, dude.
For real though, for real. Like it is crazy.
Not to cut you off, Glasses, because
No.
you got something to say, but
No, 100%.
wow, dude, it's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, go off. Say what we gotta say. I mean, It's just insanity. But what I gotta say is the people in the chat were saying they want to see this next week. They want to see a little continuation of the conversation. So I mean, I think we gotta give it to them.
Hey, bro, it might have to be the vibe, bro.
Yeah, we gotta come prepared. I know there are a ton of questions. I'm gonna go all the way back up, scroll back up in chat. Whatever we did not answer or address, I will be taking note of, and we'll be answering those in the beginning. So I did my little intro, my little spiel. To start this one, you're not gonna get that every week. We'll just introduce topics and stuff like that, but we'll also answer any lingering questions since we're gonna be continuing the conversation. But
Good work, everybody.
yeah, that's all I gotta say. I mean, the man with the man bun, Salt Bay over there, said it. So I think on that we can wrap. Thank you for tuning into the first episode of Chopping It Up.
Yes, sir. Thank you all. Appreciate
Hey,
y'all.
Appreciate
Hey,
everybody.
Appreciate
real quick, yo.
Go
Shout out
ahead,
to all
bro.
y'all people on the East Coast. I know it's like 9:40. Y'all devoted y'all whole prime time to us. We appreciate it, yo. Real
Yes,
talk.
sir.
Like this goes
Mhm.
big. Like goes so big. You don't even know it, man. Thank you.
I appreciate
True,
y'all.
I'm falling
Okay.
asleep right now.
Oh, this guy, huh?
Good looks, Dill. Good looks. Bro.
Yeah, dude. It's
And
past his
also- and
bedtime.
also-
That's what they on Instagram. You know the vibe.
Also the people that called in. I mean, like, don't be afraid to call in again next week, yo. The questions
real.
were going crazy. Like, we appreciate all the questions. We appreciate the input. We appreciate the contribution, the vibes. This is good vibes, except for that fool, whatever his name is.
Ooh,
Everything
bro.
else, everything else is good vibes. We
It's all
appreciate it,
good, man.
and we gotta keep carrying this conversation. It's bigger than us. I mean, it's gonna affect our kids, their kids, the kids after them, everyone. This is a big thing. We need to keep talking about it for sure.
Yes,
Preach.
sir.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we can't do it without y'all, So
Easy.
Yeah, keep
again,
showing up,
thank
please.
you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you for tuning in. As you saw right there, follow the homie Redefine Black Masculinity. He's doing great work. I mean, hey,
Good stuff there, real good stuff
yeah,
there.
big
Yes, sir.
time stuff, big time moves. I mean,
Big
hey,
time moves.
even
Hey,
Ellen.
we only about the big time moves, huh?
Yes,
Easy,
sir.
bro.
Yes,
Easy
sir.
money, bro.
I mean,
Folks like y'all, bro.
what? I mean, come on, dude. This guy has Ellen retweeting. Yes, Ellen did
Come on
retweet.
now.
Wait. Ellen DeGeneres?
Ellen DeGeneres.
The
Mr.
Yeah.
one and only.
With the repost on Instagram.
Hey, bro.
This
Come
guy's
on,
doing
man.
big things.
Hey, hey,
Hey.
some random black guy. You might need to be on this a couple times, bro.
Yeah.
On the big screen, bro.
Oh my god.
Oh man. Yes, sir.
You bless.
But like as I said before, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next week. And as always, ain't nothing but love on this side. Peace out, y'all.
Sir. Take care, y'all.